This story is titled, My Psycho Ex Falsely Accused Me and Tried to Destroy My Life, but I Made Her Regret It. Hey everyone! I spend so much time finding these stories for you. If you enjoy the content, please hit that subscribe button. It means the world and helps keep this journey going strong. Let's grow together. Now let's start the video. OP starts by saying, Alright, buckle up because this is the story of how I almost ruined my life by letting Becky, probably the most toxic person I've ever met, into it. Backstory. I'm Alfie, originally from Colombia, and I moved to London to start fresh. I had my life pretty sorted back home. 6 rental properties, steady income, but I wanted more. A new start, maybe even some peace and quiet. Hilariously, I got the exact opposite. I met Becky through Joanna, this family friend who's usually chill and always seems to know someone who needs help. Joanna invited Becky over for one of those big Sunday lunches. She introduced Becky as someone who was having a rough time, bouncing between landlords and struggling to get her life on track. I felt for her. I mean, who hasn't had a crappy landlord, right? At first glance, Becky seemed fine. She was a bit loud, but nothing crazy. She had a sob story about life screwing her over, and I bought into it because, hey, everyone deserves a break. Plus, she had this way of making you feel like you were the most interesting person in the room. That wasn't genuine. It was just the start of her game. Becky started showing up more often. It wasn't weird at first. She'd come to lunch, chat, and maybe stay to help clean up. Normal stuff. But then she'd linger. Like I'd be wrapping up, ready to call it a day, and she'd still be hanging around. Oh, I was just in the area, she'd say. Joanna later told me Becky specifically asked for my address. Red flag number 1. But I didn't see it at the time. Eventually, she started texting me. A lot. At first, it was casual. Hey, how's your day? Or what are you up to? Harmless stuff. But then it escalated. Becky's need for control showed in her obsessive texting. Multiple messages and calls if I didn't reply immediately. As if silence was her worst enemy. I didn't think much of it. Maybe she was just super into me, right? I mean, who doesn't like a little attention? But then she started showing up unannounced. She'd bring food, which was nice, but she'd just stay. And then there'd be these little comments. Oh, your place is nice, but you should really think about painting the walls. Or, I could totally help you organize your stuff. It felt harmless. But looking back, she was trying to stake her claim. The first big red flag smacked me in the face during one of our dinners out. We were at this cute little Italian place, and I made a light joke about how she pronounced something on the menu. For the record, I wasn't being mean. It was genuinely funny. She went dead silent, like not a word for 5 minutes. Then, out of nowhere, she started tearing up. In the middle of the restaurant, she says, Why would you humiliate me like that? Everyone around us stopped eating. I was mortified. I spent the rest of the night apologizing for something that wasn't even offensive, but she played it like I'd insulted her entire family. And I'll admit, I fell for it. I thought, okay, maybe she's sensitive. I'll be more careful. Yeah, no. That was just her warming up. After that, Becky started turning up the intensity. If I said I was busy, she'd guilt-trip me. Oh, I guess you have more important people to see, she'd say, half joking, but with that tone that made it clear she wasn't joking at all. She'd ask about my schedule, then boom, she'd pop up. Low-key stalker vibes TBH. I couldn't even go for a drink with friends without her texting, Where are you? Who are you with? The real kicker was when she started messing with my work. I had this business arrangement with a woman named Nora, who was helping me sort out my UK residency. It was purely professional, but Becky couldn't stand that Nora existed. I just don't trust her, she said. She probably has a thing for you. I tried to reassure her. Nora's just helping me with my visa, that's all. But Becky didn't let it go. One day she casually mentioned that she'd spoken to Nora. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, spoken to Nora? I asked. She smirked, like she was proud of herself. I told her the truth, that we're engaged. Engaged! We weren't even officially dating, let alone engaged. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. When I confronted her, she acted like she'd done me a favor. I had to protect what we have, she said, like she hadn't just sabotaged my life. Nora, understandably, freaked out and canceled our agreement. Without that, my residency plan was toast. Becky didn't care. When I tried to explain how much damage she'd done, she just flipped it back on me. Why are you mad at me? I was just trying to help. That's when it finally hit me. Becky wasn't just clingy or insecure, she was dangerous. But breaking things off with her wasn't going to be as simple as telling her to leave me alone. Becky wasn't the type to just let things go. She was already showing me how far she'd go to stay in control, and I had no idea what she had planned next. When the mask slipped all right, so after Becky blew up my residency plans by lying to Nora, I started realizing just how much of a mess I'd gotten myself into. You'd think having your future completely derailed by someone would make them feel even a little guilty, right? Nope, not Becky. She acted like she'd done me a favor. "You're better off without people like her in your life," she told me, smiling like she'd just handed me the winning lottery ticket. I just sat there, stunned. This wasn't a misunderstanding. She knew exactly what she'd done, and she didn't give a damn. That's when I started trying to put some distance between us. But Becky wasn't having it. She'd send another message, and another, until my phone was practically buzzing off the table. "Are you mad at me? Did I do something wrong? Please just say something." It was exhausting. Then came the unannounced visits. One time, I told her I needed to stay home and work on some stuff, thinking that would buy me a quiet evening. Nope. An hour later, there's a knock at the door. It's Becky, holding a bag of food like she's just done me the biggest favor. "I thought you could use a break," she said, walking right in before I could even process what was happening. She'd act all sweet and casual, but then she'd start asking these loaded questions. "So, who were you texting earlier?" Or, "Why didn't you mention that coworker before?" She wasn't curious. She was fishing for reasons to be upset. And if I didn't answer the right way, she'd sulk or blow up, depending on her mood. The worst part was the paranoia. Becky didn't trust anyone, and that included me. If my phone buzzed, her eyes would dart to the screen faster than I could pick it up. One time she saw a text from my brother and immediately went into interrogation mode. "Why didn't you tell me you were meeting him? Are you hiding something?" I tried to explain that it was a last-minute plan, but it didn't matter. In her head, I'd committed some kind of betrayal. She even started keeping tabs on my schedule. If I was late for anything, even by 5 minutes, she'd accuse me of lying about where I'd been. It was like living under constant surveillance. One night, she invited me over for dinner, and I reluctantly went. By this point, I knew spending time with her was a bad idea, but I figured it was better than her showing up at my place again. When I got there, everything was over the top. Candles and a fancy meal. It felt more like a setup than a dinner. Halfway through, she started talking about her exes. She hadn't said much about them before, so I was curious, until I heard what she had to say. "They were all horrible to me," she said. "None of them appreciated me." She went on about how one betrayed her, another controlled her, and the last one never deserved her. The way she described them sounded less like bad relationships and more like excuses for her own behavior. But I didn't say anything. I just nodded and let her vent. Then she said, "You're not like them. You'd never hurt me." It wasn't a compliment. It felt like a test. I smiled awkwardly and tried to change the subject, but the whole evening left me feeling uneasy. The next major blow-up happened about a week later. We were out for dinner, and she'd been drinking more than usual. By the time we left, she was in one of her moods. She started going on about how I didn't care about her, how I was distant and uninvested. "Do you even love me?" she asked, her voice getting louder. "Becky, you're drunk," I said, trying to stay calm. "Let's talk about this later." She wasn't having it. Right there, in the middle of the street, she started yelling, "Admit it! You don't care about me!" It was so extra, I legit couldn't deal. People were stopping and staring, and I was mortified. I tried to gently take her arm to lead her away, but she yanked it back and screamed, "Don't touch me!" The look people gave me was enough to make my stomach drop. She was making it look like I'd hurt her, and there was nothing I could do to prove otherwise. I raised my hands and backed away, saying, "Let's go home. We can talk there." She stormed off, and I followed at a distance, trying to process what had just happened. The next day, she called me like nothing had happened. "Hey, want to come over for lunch?" she asked, all cheerful like the night before hadn't been a total disaster. "Becky, we need to talk about what happened last night," I said. She sounded genuinely confused. "What about it?" "You screamed at me in the street," I said. "You made it look like I hurt you." She laughed. "Oh, come on, don't be so dramatic. Nobody cares." That was the moment I realized Becky wasn't just manipulative. She was dangerous. She didn't care about how her actions affected me. All that mattered to her was staying in control, and she was willing to burn my entire life down to keep it. I started trying to distance myself, but Becky wasn't stupid. She knew I was pulling away, and when she felt me slipping, she doubled down. If I didn't reply to her texts fast enough, she'd call. If I didn't pick up, she'd show up at my place. One night, she banged on my door for 10 straight minutes, shouting, "I know you're in there!" I didn't open it. I just sat there in the dark, heart racing, hoping she'd leave. Eventually she did, but not before sobbing loudly outside, saying, "Please just talk to me." It was exhausting. I felt like I was walking on eggshells every day, trying to avoid setting her off while figuring out how to get her out of my life. But I knew one thing for sure. Becky wasn't going to let go without a fight, and I wasn't ready to let her win. Becky wasn't the type to let things go quietly. If I wasn't responding the way she wanted, she'd find a way to escalate. And boy, did she escalate. One night, I was home trying to catch up on some work when I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I ignored it at first. But the knocking continued, louder and more insistent. I peeked through the peephole, and there she was. Becky, holding a bag of groceries like she was starring in some rom-com where surprise visits were romantic instead of invasive. Reluctantly, I opened the door. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I brought dinner," she said, brushing past me without waiting for an invitation. "You've been working so hard. I thought you could use a break." I stood there for a moment, debating whether to just tell her to leave. But I was tired, and the thought of dealing with her inevitable meltdown was more than I could handle right then. So, I let her stay. She unpacked the groceries and started talking about her day like everything was normal. I barely said a word, hoping she'd get the hint. But Becky never took hints. After dinner, she brought up a coworker of mine that I'd mentioned weeks ago in passing. "So, how's that woman from work?" she asked casually. But I knew it wasn't a casual question. "She's fine," I said, keeping my response as short as possible. "Just fine? You haven't mentioned her in a while." "There's nothing to mention," I replied, already tired of the conversation. She nodded slowly, her tone shifting. "You know, it's weird that you didn't bring her up again. Makes me wonder what you're hiding." I didn't respond. I knew anything I said would just feed her paranoia, so I changed the subject and waited for her to leave. The next day, she called me while I was at work. I didn't answer because I was working. By the time I got out, I had a ridiculous number of missed calls and texts. "Why aren't you answering? Is something wrong? Are you mad at me?" It was a wall of messages, each more desperate than the last. When I finally called her back, she immediately went on the offensive. "Why didn't you answer me? Do you know how worried I was?" "I was at work, Becky," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "I couldn't answer." "That's not an excuse," she snapped. "You could have at least sent a quick text." I took a deep breath and tried to reason with her, but it was pointless. She wasn't interested in understanding. She just wanted control. By the end of the call, I was so drained I couldn't even be angry. I just hung up and promised myself I'd figure out how to end this. The breaking point came a few days later. She invited me over for what she called a serious talk. I knew it wasn't going to be good, but I went anyway because I didn't want her showing up at my place again. As soon as I sat down, she started in. "I feel like you're not putting in enough effort," she said. "You're distant. You don't seem excited to see me anymore." I tried to stay calm. "Becky, I've been busy. It's not that I don't care. I just have a lot going on." She didn't like that. "You always have an excuse," she said. "If you really cared, you'd make time for me." I started to push back, telling her I couldn't drop everything for her all the time, but that only made things worse. She started yelling, listing all the ways she thought I'd failed her. "I've been there for you when no one else was. I've given you everything and this is how you repay me?" I decided I'd had enough. "Becky, I think I should leave," I said, standing up. "Oh, so now you're running away?" she shouted. "That's what cowards do." I walked out without another word, feeling like I just survived a storm. But I knew this wasn't over. Sure enough, the next night, she showed up at my door again. She banged on it for what felt like forever, yelling for me to let her in. "Alfie, I know you're in there. Please, just talk to me." I didn't respond. I just sat there in silence, hoping she'd leave. Eventually she did, but not before shouting, "You'll regret this, Alfie. You'll regret it." At that moment, I realized Becky wasn't going to go away quietly. She was determined to stay in my life, no matter how much damage she caused. And I knew I had to figure out how to stop her before things got even worse. Let me tell you something. Becky seriously underestimated me. Becky's day of reckoning. Becky seriously thought she had me beat. She genuinely believed she could bulldoze through my life, ruin my reputation, and walk away like she was untouchable. What she didn't realize is that I'm not the kind of guy you screw over and leave standing in the wreckage. If she wanted a fight, I was ready to take her down. And I wasn't going to stop until she regretted every single move she made. The first thing I did was start collecting everything. And I mean everything. I went through all the texts she'd sent me. The manipulative ones, the accusatory ones, the ones where she tried to flip between loving me and threatening me in the same sentence. I dug out voicemails where she ranted like a lunatic, emails where she twisted the truth, and even old screenshots of her trying to pick fights over nothing. You know the ones. Why didn't you reply in 5 minutes? Are you with someone else? I was done ignoring her chaos. This time, I was building a case. The file grew quickly. Every time she sent me another long-winded, self-pitying message, I saved it. Every time she tried to guilt-trip me into seeing her, I added it to the pile. Every random, passive-aggressive comment she left about me to mutual friends, it all went into my collection. She had no idea that she was handing me the tools to take her down. Once I had enough, I reached out to Nora. Yeah, that Nora. The same woman Becky had sabotaged just to mess up my visa. I wasn't sure how that conversation would go. Would Nora even believe me after everything Becky had told her? But the moment I explained what was happening, Nora wasn't just on my side. She was livid. Turns out Becky had been harassing Nora too, calling her names like fraud and homewrecker, and blaming her for problems that had nothing to do with her. Nora didn't just agree to back me up. She volunteered to give a full statement about everything Becky had done. At this point, I was starting to feel the shift. For months, Becky had made me feel like I was trapped in her world, constantly reacting to her madness. But now, I was the one calling the shots. And it felt good. Once I had Nora's support, I knew it was time to go to the police. I didn't just walk in with a sob story. I walked in with a mountain of evidence. I filed a formal counter-complaint against Becky, accusing her of harassment, defamation, and making false accusations. Let me tell you, the look on the officer's face when I laid out my case was priceless. Becky had tried to paint herself as this poor, innocent victim, but the sheer amount of proof I had made it crystal clear who the real problem was. The officers didn't just listen. They started taking action. But I wasn't about to stop there. For months, Becky had been bragging about her job, acting like it was the crown jewel of her life. What she didn't realize was that I'd been quietly piecing together some of her dirty laundry. She'd lied to her employer about her legal status, and her drinking habits were well known in certain circles. With my lawyer's help, I put together an anonymous report and sent it straight to her boss. I didn't just include her lies. I added screenshots of her bad-mouthing her coworkers, skipping shifts, and showing up hungover. Within weeks, Becky was fired. To this point, I could have stopped. I'd cleared my name and Becky's life was already falling apart. But nah, I wanted the full W. But then I thought about all the other people she'd hurt. The people she'd left in her wake before she ever got to me. So, I reached out to Danny, her ex. The moment I mentioned Becky, he laughed. "What's she done this time?" he asked. It didn't take much to get Danny talking. He told me about how she'd pulled similar stunts with him. Accusations, manipulations, and non-stop drama until he finally cut her off. "She's been doing this crap for years," he said. "It's about time someone held her accountable." I didn't stop with Danny. I contacted a few of Becky's estranged family members too. It turns out Becky had a history of burning bridges. One by one, people shared stories of how she'd lied, cheated, or manipulated her way into their lives, and then left them to clean up the mess. By the time I was done, I had enough dirt on her to fill a novel. I took all of it, my receipts, Nora's statement, Danny's testimony, and the stories from her family, and built an airtight case. When I presented everything to the police and my lawyer, even they were stunned. Becky wasn't just exposed. She was obliterated. Her whole act, her lies, her manipulations, it all came crashing down. And you know what? It was the most satisfying feeling in the world. For months, she'd tried to make me feel powerless. She thought she could destroy my life and move on to her next victim without a second thought. But now, Becky was the one watching her world fall apart, piece by piece. Her job was gone. Her reputation was in shambles. Even the mutual friends she'd tried to turn against me started realizing who she really was. Mutual friends started realizing who she really was. One by one, they were like, "Bye, Felicia." And me? I wasn't just standing. I was winning. With Becky knocked off her pedestal, it was time to reclaim what was mine. The first step? Fixing my visa situation. Thanks to Nora and the police complaint, I was finally able to apply for a skilled worker visa. It wasn't an easy process, but I wasn't about to let Becky's nonsense ruin my future. My landlord, who had been on my side from the beginning, wrote me a glowing recommendation. He even included a little dig about how I'd been an exemplary tenant despite unwarranted distractions. Legend. Between his support and Nora's testimony, I managed to pull everything together. A few months later, I got the email. My visa was approved. I was staying in London, and Becky's attempts to ruin my life had officially failed. Meanwhile, Becky's world was crumbling. She was fired from her job, and word of her antics started spreading. Remember how she used to manipulate mutual friends? Well, those same friends started comparing notes. Once they realized they'd all been lied to, Becky was toast. Nobody wanted anything to do with her. She tried moving in with a friend, but that didn't last. Apparently, her behavior got so bad that even her last remaining ally kicked her out. Becky was running out of places to hide, and I didn't feel the least bit sorry for her. The best part? I didn't just survive, I thrived. I kept my job, my home, and my dignity. Becky had tried to break me, but all she did was teach me how to fight back. I didn't go crawling back to Colombia or let her chase me out of the life I'd built. I stood my ground, and I won. Today, I'm in a better place than ever. I've rebuilt my relationships, made new connections, and surrounded myself with people who actually give a damn about me. Becky, she's nothing but a bad memory. The last I heard, she was still trying to spin her sob story to anyone who'd listen, but nobody was buying it. Her lies had caught up to her, and her reputation was in shambles. The icing on the cake? Every time I walk through London, I'm reminded of everything I fought for. This city is mine now, and no one, not even Becky, can take that away from me. So yeah, if you're wondering if revenge is worth it, let me tell you, it absolutely is. But the best kind of revenge isn't just about taking someone down. It's about building yourself back up and living your best life while they watch from the sidelines. Becky thought she'd ruined me, but all she did was make me stronger. And you know what? That's the kind of victory that feels damn good. Final update. Hey guys! It's been a bit since my last update, but I had to share what happened next because, of course, Becky couldn't stay out of my life. A couple of weeks after everything went down, I thought I was finally free of her. The police had my counter-complaint on file. She was fired from her job, and she'd been exposed for the manipulative mess she was. Life was finally getting back to normal. Or so I thought. Out of nowhere, I got a message from a mutual friend. Let's call her Jess. Jess asked, "Hey, have you talked to Becky lately? She's been telling people you reached out and want to get back together." I almost choked on my coffee. What? Jess explained that Becky had been going around saying I'd apologized for everything and wanted to work things out. She even claimed I'd been secretly texting her, begging her to forgive me. BTW, I hadn't spoken to Becky since the day I filed the complaint. Jess, thankfully, was skeptical. "It didn't sound like you," she said. "That's why I wanted to check." Good call, Jess. The next day, Becky upped the ante. She started posting cryptic stuff on social media. Things like, "People can change when they realize what they lost," and "Forgiveness is the strongest form of love." It was obvious she was fishing for attention, trying to make people think we were back together. The funny thing? Most of her followers weren't buying it. A few even commented things like, "Isn't this the same guy you said was toxic?" And, "Girl, you okay?" Her social media sob story wasn't working, so she moved to plan B, showing up in person. One evening, I was coming back from work when I saw her standing across the street from my flat. I froze for a second, hoping she hadn't noticed me, but of course she did. She waved like we were old friends and started walking toward me. I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of a confrontation, so I walked right past her and into my building without saying a word. She followed me to the door, shouting, "Alfie, can we talk? Just for a minute." I turned around and said, "Becky, you're not supposed to be here. You know that." She looked genuinely shocked, like I just insulted her. "I just wanted to apologize," she said, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Why are you acting like this?" I didn't respond. I went inside and locked the door. 5 minutes later, I got a call from her. She used a new number because I'd blocked all her others. I didn't answer, of course, but she left a voicemail. It was the usual mix of self-pity and manipulation. "I can't believe you treat me this way after everything we've been through. I thought we could at least talk like adults." Needless to say, I forwarded that voicemail to the police. They called her and reminded her of the complaint on file, making it clear that she needed to back off. For a while, it worked. Or so I thought. A week later, she tried again, this time through another mutual friend. Let's call him Mark. Mark texted me saying, "Hey, Becky's been telling people you're harassing her. What's going on?" I almost lost it. What? She's the one harassing me. Apparently, Becky had started flipping the narrative, claiming I was the one who couldn't let go. She even showed people fake screenshots of messages from me, begging her to come back. The messages were so badly photoshopped that anyone with half a brain could tell they weren't real, but it was still infuriating. Luckily, Mark was on my side. "Don't worry," he said. "Nobody believes her. She's grasping at straws." The final straw came when I heard from Danny, her ex. He called me out of the blue, laughing his ass off. "Dude, you won't believe this," he said. "Becky reached out to me. Apparently, she'd tried to spin the same sob story to Danny, claiming she'd changed and wanted to reconnect with people from her past. Danny saw right through it. I told her to lose my number," he said. But man, she's persistent. Good luck with that. After that, I decided to do one last thing to shut her down for good. I posted a simple message on my social media. For anyone who's heard rumors about me and Becky, no, we are not in contact. No, I have not reached out. And no, I will not be tolerating any more lies. The truth always wins. The response was overwhelmingly supportive. People messaged me saying they were glad I spoke up, and a few even shared screenshots of Becky trying to stir up drama. It felt like the final nail in the coffin of her ridiculous attempts to stay relevant in my life. Since then, Becky's been quiet. At least as far as I know. Maybe she finally got the message. Maybe she's moved on to her next victim. Either way, I'm done wasting energy on her. I've moved on, and life is good. My career's back on track. My social circle is stronger than ever, and I'm finally able to enjoy some peace. As for Becky, well, karma has a funny way of catching up to people like her, and honestly, watching her self-destruct was the best closure I could have asked for.